morning, good morning. I'm Strider, your host here at Author in the Headlights. And today we have a Northwest well-known person, Kerry Schafer. Good morning, Kerry.
Morning. Hi.
Hi. And now we get a twofold thing here because not only is this Kerry Schafer, it's also Kerry Anne King. Now, how's that unique? That's just a part of what happens in the writer's world. Kerry, tell us about it.
Well, it's kind of a long story, actually. I was thinking about this morning, my publishing journey. It's been 10 years this year. So I started off as Kerry Schafer kind of randomly, just writing what I loved. So I did fantasy, and then I did a paranormal mystery. And then my agent suggested I try writing women's fiction. And when that one got picked up by the publisher, they wanted a pen name. So that's where Kerry Anne King came from, because I had to find something, and I kept my first name because I know I will never remember to answer to something else.
Absolutely. Hey, when they say Kerry, you know who it is.
Yeah.
When I hear Strider, I pretty much know who it is. It's not like John. There aren't too
It's
many of
not a
that.
common name.
That's true. So it tends to work. And thank you so much for being with us today. And now you do have several sets of books. You've got the Between trilogy, which is fantasy. You've got the Shadow Valley Manor Mysteries, which is a paranormal weirdness. I think that is how you say it. And you've got Dream Wars. And then you've got, oh my gosh, I have no idea, 7 of your Kerry Anne King novels.
Yeah.
You've gone along a lot of different directions. Which one is your preferred?
Well, another really interesting life question. I honestly was just really pondering this in the shower this morning, which is where I do my best thinking, it seems.
Happens. I sing there, so.
I did really kind of start randomly. The writing is like, oh, this sounds fun. And the first thing that got published was fantasy, and I do love fantasy. And then the paranormal mystery was actually, it was a book that was written on a dare. So I was playing around with vampires that were not sparkly, and one that was maybe already old when he got turned. And one of my friends challenged me to actually write the book because I was just goofing around. So I did, and then I got that published. And then my agent said, try women's fiction. So I did, and that got published. And I was not planful about it at all. But where my heart really is, and the very first thing I queried was actually a mystery thriller kind of a thing. And I've been edging my way back. So my last Kerry Anne King books both had mysteries at the heart of them. And that's really what I'm busy writing right now, and kind of wanting to find my way into.
If that's where your writing takes you, that's where we end up. I mean, I'm very much a pantser, so it just goes where it goes, and you kind of go, oh wow, I have no idea. Now I have to go back and change it.
Exactly. So the book that I'm writing right now is totally case in point. I've learned to plot some as I've progressed as a writer, but there's always a point about maybe 3/4 of the way through a novel now that I realize that I've gone way off the rails, and I need to go back to the beginning and line everything up and clarify and tighten. And I'm doing that right now with my current work in progress, because that's my process, and I've stopped fighting it.
Oh,
I just
it's
know
true.
that's
I
what's going
always,
to happen.
exactly. I get about, 2/3, 3/4 of the way through, and I go, okay, now what are we going to do with this? I don't want a
Right.
150,000 page book. I want it done in the 90s, somewhere in there. That's my version of life. And so when it gets down to like 60,000 words, I've got to go, okay, I've got to do something with this to bring it together. And that is my writing style. I don't necessarily recommend that to anybody because it has its own issues, but I agree with you. That's what happens.
Well, and it's interestingly enough, and that was my revelation this morning, is I did my career the same way. I just pantsing it, making it up as I go along, which is not recommended by all the experts out there. You should pick a genre and kind of stick with it. And if you're going to write outside of it, get a different pen name, be planful. I don't know. Life is short. I've always been a big fan of do what you love. And so I've done that with my writing too. And I actually really love that it's not, it's nice that I'm not dependent on it for my money at this point. So just, go where the muse wants to take me, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, and you're right, what you know, or at least what you feel.
Well, that too.
I
Right.
was a
And
firefighter
processing.
EMT, so
Right. Well,
that gives me a lot of insight to things, to action, to trauma, to
right.
what happens, to how to go about. And it really does add to your writing because it's not just guesswork. It's not just making it up. It's not putting it together. I mean, you have to put it together, but it is feeling and knowledge behind the scene that really carries the story.
Right, right, absolutely. And an understanding of how different types of people react to crisis. It's always fun, I find, no matter what I'm writing. Fun's not the right word, but an interesting challenge and exercise, no matter what I'm writing, whether it's fantasy or mystery or whatever, to have a crisis, because that is when people begin to react in very interesting ways, maybe responding in a manner that is not characteristic of their usual, and
True.
then ways open for them where interesting and new and exciting things can happen.
And the human condition of fight or flight, that where that comes in. And sometimes you really don't know or what to expect. And it
Nope.
just happens because people are people. Everyone is different.
Yeah,
So
yeah, absolutely.
it does get a lot of depth to your storylines. And and your trilogies, your between trilogy, which is fantasy, how does that different from your other kind of things, or does it?
It's different. Partly it's different because I was just learning how to be a writer. I think, and so, I had not really figured out my weird sort of hybrid plotting pantsing method, but they're definitely fantasy. I began, actually, between came from me playing with the concept of reality. I wrote that when I was working as a crisis mental health worker, and dealing with some people whose version of reality was certainly different than mine, and questioning, what really is reality, and who's to say that mine is the accurate one and somebody else's maybe isn't also accurate. And so I began playing with dream worlds, and that's where that fantasy series trilogy came from. And then, because I'm a writer and I love these things, and I'm a Tolkien aficionado, I pulled in
Woohoo! I got
dragons and yeah, yeah. When I discovered Tolkien, I should tell you this. I was telling Strider before we came on live that his name makes me think of the Strider from Tolkien.
what can I
I
say?
actually grew up my mother was very much a reader, and she brought me into reading, but she did not like magic fantasy books at all. I really was not allowed to read them, and grew up as a child not reading that kind of thing. And I discovered The Lord of the Rings on a band trip. A little known fact about me, I actually played the tuba in high school band.
There's
And
one.
we were on a bus going on a tour, and some guy on the bus was reading The Lord of the Rings. And I said, "Oh, that looks good. Can I read it when you're done?" So he handed me book one, and I did not surface again until I had finished all of them. And it opened an entirely new and wonderful world for me.
It's amazing how you can be sucked into a book and actually be
Absolutely.
part of and live it. That's an amazing thing that people that don't read or don't read well, perhaps, don't know. I mean, they really don't. Reading, that's, a book. I haven't read a book since I was in grade school. Well, that's could be a problem, really,
It's
because
tragic, really.
it is tragic. It's amazing what you can do when your mind flows in and sets in to a good book, a good read, and a good author. That's kind of my task as an author, as a writer, is to make it so that people embed themselves into the story. They can see it. They can tell what's going on. They are part of it, standing right there
Absolutely.
beside the person or being that protagonist doing those things. So it's truly
Absolutely.
important, and it's amazing what the human mind will do. Take you right there.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's really is amazing, isn't it? It's like kind of a magical thing. I always think writing and reading, it's really a partnership. Like I, as the writer, am writing the book, but then the reader really brings it to life. And the book is going to be different for everybody who reads it. It's never the same for any two people because we bring our own history, imagination, what we feel, experience, love, the lens which we see the world through to the books that we read.
It's true. And I know I've got my books in ebook, I've got them in print, hard copy, I've got one in audiobook, and I tell you, everything has its own version. And people say, oh, I'll just wait till it comes out in a movie. Well, books may not come out in a movie. And even then, you're picking up somebody else's view of the story, which may be different than yours. I know even that with my audiobook with Stone, um, Todd Meneses did the narrating on it. And he came up with a voice for Stone that was different than the one I had considered. And yet he did a marvelous job with it, just excellent. And so his version of things, and we created a couple of characters, changed them around to fit a little better because we worked on making those voices fit the characters. And so every time that happens, it changes your view just a little bit on what's happening in the reading of the book. But there's nothing like doing it yourself. There's nothing like reading it and your mind puts those things in place. It's amazing.
Right.
So you said you're having something come up now. What's your next book?
Well, my next book, really currently right now, I am working on something that I'm getting to my agent hopefully in January. So it doesn't have a home yet. It is the story of a young woman who is a party planner in a smallish town. And she gets asked to plan a huge send-off death party for a young rock star who is dying and does not want a funeral. Before that can happen, he dies, and she's very suspicious that maybe it wasn't natural causes. So she gets to, while she's planning this party, investigate against a fair bit of opposition from other people, including his family. So I'm having a great deal of fun with this one.
Well, that's great. When an author can actually have fun writing, you better. Now, I noticed that in your writing, you've got some commonalities throughout. Strong women characters, some sort of mystery element to it, romantic
Usually.
subplot, quirky characters. There's usually humor. So this is your plot pattern.
Yeah.
Do you have any tool of the trade that helps you keep track of what you're doing or the way you write?
I wish I did. And as I get older, I have to admit my memory is not quite what it was. So it's getting a little dicier. So this time I actually, as I'm writing the book that I'm writing now, I have a notebook open by where I'm writing and I'm jotting things down as I go. So I have a page for characters. So I have their names. So I don't have to keep paging back to try and remember what I called that person. I have notes for plot. I have, but basic running notes. I've tried at times to be really more organized, but I hate that. Honestly, I'm not that person and it takes a lot of energy. So,
well, just a few weeks ago, we had a talk with Diane Garland of Your World Keeper. That's her business. And she does book Bibles, story Bibles.
nice.
For authors to keep track of all that stuff, especially with a series or a group of stories similar, so that you can remember who does what, when, why, and where. Amazing process. So I do highly recommend her.
Right.
All those issues that nobody thinks about when they're writing, and that it does come up because then you've written so much you can't find it to go back and look for it.
Right.
You have to read the whole book.
Right.
Where was that? Oh, maybe it was the other book. It's tough. It really is.
Yeah. It does get complicated. And I wish I had done that with other books that I, like with the Shadow Valley series. I'm like, I don't even remember. And then you have to go hunting. I do have a plotting method kind of that I use, and it's James Scott Bell's signpost scenes. I love those. Those were the first thing that actually really worked for me as far as plotting, because they let me just kind of do my wild random writing that I like to do, but with an eye out for, I know I need this kind of scene at about this point in the book. And so I watch my word count and I'm like, okay, I'm at about this many pages. I need this thing to happen, whatever that is. It's he calls things like a kick in the shins or
some motion, move it.
Yeah.
Well,
And
that is
those
important.
kind of things help.
They are helpful to authors to know when, okay, I'm getting stuck. What am I going to do? Look back and find out where that shift needs to be.
The other thing that I find helps when I'm getting stuck is to just go back and look at my characters. What have my characters been doing? What is the thread that, what is every one of them, and often not the main character? What are they thinking and feeling? What are they doing right now while they're off page? Kind of like a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. I love that. I don't know if you've ever read
I
that play,
haven't.
but it's brilliant. It's a Tom Stoppard wrote a play for Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, who are minor characters in Hamlet, who are basically sent off, to run an errand and die. And so he wrote a whole play about them, and it's funny and
Those that
philosophical.
disappeared.
Yeah, pretty much.
Or
So
the rest of
I
the
go back
story.
and think about that with my minor characters. Where are they? What are they doing right now? Is there something that I'm missing that might play into my plot that I need to pull forward? And that helps sometimes when I'm stuck as well.
Well, that's good. Now we're running out of time. It always happens. I hate this. I really do, because I personally have so much fun doing this that I get caught up in the talking and forget the fact that, they're going to click this off in a little while.
Fantastic. If we have time, I want to mention real quick that I will also be at the Pacific Northwest Writers Association retreat in February as one of the speakers. So
All right. There
come
you
join
go.
us.
For those in PNWA, or you can certainly join up with them. There you go. A writer's retreat in February. All righty. And I will see you probably next fall at that convention, and
Awesome.
we'll meet up there again. And thank you so much for spending part of your day with us. We really appreciate it. We love to connect with other writers, authors, and hear about their things, as well as bringing your books to the front where people can see them and say, "Ooh, I like that. That's a great idea." So I hope that
Fabulous.
works for you. And we'll say goodbye for now. And until next time, everyone else, thank you for being part of us here at Author in the Headlights, sponsored by DurhamandPublishing.com. And until next time, thanks.
Thank you.
Sponsored by DurhamandPublishing.com.